This is the Commonwealth, where we interview leaders of disruptive change. Today's guest is Al Maxey. Al has been inducted into both the Nebraska and Indiana Basketball Hall of Fames. He became the first black lieutenant at the Lincoln Police Department and served as the bodyguard for Martin Luther King Jr. during his rally in Lincoln. So, Al, first off, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank Nick. I think this is interesting.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Good. So, as I was doing research, I was strongly debating on which question to ask you first.
Oh.
But I think I'm going to start with your high school basketball career.
Okay.
Yeah, and you played alongside Oscar Robertson, correct?
I did.
What was that like? I'm sure he was a phenomenal high school player like he was in the NBA.
Oh, he was. It was something that probably a lot of people other than I knew that he would grow up to be who he is today. But it started in the neighborhood with Oscar Robertson. He didn't live that far from me. We didn't go to the same junior high school or elementary schools, but we always ended up on the playgrounds and in the YMCAs and whatever else, and behind people's backyard and in the alleys and just playing ball until we just kind of grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up he was a year ahead of me in high school. We played together in 1956.
And that was the year that you won.
That was the second year we won the state basketball championship in the state of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah, and at that time, so I've seen the movie Hoosiers. Have you?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Didn't you all play around the same time as the real life team in Hoosiers?
We were a little younger than the team that played in that era.
Okay.
I think in that era was like 1954.
Okay. Yeah, it was Milan High.
Right.
Yeah.
Milan, I think, was the name of the school that ended up coming into Indianapolis and playing in the championship. And then you've seen the Hoosier, the movie. Actually, in the movie, some of the actors there were people that were on that team. They were sitting on the bench on the final game.
Okay.
If you look at that film, then you'll see that team that's sitting there. My high school coach was on there. He was the coach of the team. And Oscar brother was on that bench, and a lot of the older players were sitting there.
Wow. In that time, Indiana didn't have classes as far as like school size.
No, one class.
Yes. So when you won the title, you were playing against schools of all size in front of a crowd that had 10 to 12,000 people?
Yes, at Butler University.
Yeah. What was that like playing?
Well, it wasn't that, it was exciting regardless. We even played in our own gym, which was very small at that time. It didn't mean that much to us, the size and what we were playing. We didn't know that probably we were making history and not know it. Everybody, the news writings and all the clips came out, you just got more motivated, more excited. Not only the team, the school, the city. Because Crispus Attucks High School was an all-black school. And a lot of over 90% of the black students in Indianapolis went to Crispus Attucks. Now, other students were accepted, from what I've heard later, at the other schools. There was Arsenal Tech, there was Shortridge High School, which was not too far from my home. My older brother went to Shortridge, but I went to Crispus Attucks because most of my friends were over there, and it was about a 1.5 mile walking distance from me, so I didn't mind it. Yeah. And that's how that started. So in 54, 55 is when they won the first state championship. Oscar played on that. Mm-hmm. And then 56, we won it for the second time. But the difference between that year and my year as a junior, Oscar's year as a senior, we didn't lose any games. We went the whole year without losing a game.
You mentioned before making history, and at that time you were the first all-black basketball team to win a high school championship in the nation. Did the team realize how remarkable that was at that time?
No. Most of this didn't care that much, at that time, as years go by, you hear all the history and who did this and who did that. I also heard somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, there was another Christmas Addicts high school somewhere in the South. But you should look up who Christmas Addicts was.
Okay.
And
it's Christmas Addicts?
Yes.
Okay, Christmas Addicts.
Crispus Attucks.
Crispus, okay. I read a description of the game that your team was playing 8-on-5 that season, with the 3 other people being the refs on the court. Did you experience any of that?
Oh yeah, we have. I actually had some pictures of some of the snapshots that it took place, during the games and so forth. I also have what the newsprints came out about, the lopsidedness of the referees and how they called things, and if you're dribbling too high or if you're holding the ball and stuff, they would call that just to change the game. I should have been playing on the 55 team, the 56 team, and the 57 team, because I was on the reserve team, and there was another senior that was on that 55 team that the coach says, okay, I think I better just keep him on, but you should be up here. But, and the only reason that he probably said that is because I had played with all these guys, and I was just like a year or 2 younger than they were. And he knew that that team would gel together and do what he asked and keep your mouth shut. We're playing the game to win. In order to do this with the referees that you talked about, we got to get the lead right off the bat. Just go as fast, as hard as you can to at least get a 10-point lead. And then things would kind of settle up.
Wow.
And then we struggled this sometimes toward the end. Try to foul you out of the game. You touch somebody, they call a foul. You dribbled the right way, and they said you double dribbled or you dribbled. This is back in the 50s, so it's a little different.
As a teenager, then I'm sure it was frustrating dealing with that, and it's out of your control, and there's
out of your control. But what kept us not as frustrated about it is the coach's mental knowledge of the game and his control of himself about the game that helped us keep ourselves down, because he did not, and he always said, don't say anything to any of the referees. Let me take care of all that. Wow. And if I see that you're getting frustrated or upset about it, because Oscar did get upset a lot, but when you start beating people by 10 and 15 and 20 points, you're already satisfied. You know that you're just, and there's a lot of people that were very good ball players, of course, out of the state of Indiana. That we know, actually, we kind of play against, played in the Sandlot games, and so all that was nice, and as time went on, it got better and better because the news built it up and said how great we were, and we knew we were great and carried ourselves that way. So it did become more fun than frustrated.
Okay, that's a good lesson. Even because I played basketball growing up, and I would get frustrated even when I did commit the foul. So I can't.
Right, why did I do that? That's when I had jumped to the next level. Mm-hmm. You got more frustrated then than you did in high school. Yeah, and that kind of segues into the next topic of you eventually came to Nebraska to go to school and play basketball at the University of Nebraska. Right. What was that process like? Well, the process really was probably more exciting at the end of my senior year. First of all, we had just won the state championship the year before. We won it the year before that. So this is my senior year. Oscar's no longer around. And now all these scholarships start coming in my senior year. And that was kind of exciting. I got all of this stuff is coming in, and everybody's asking me, where are you going to go? Are you going to follow Oscar? Matter of fact, my junior year, his senior year, I traveled a lot of places looking at schools with him because they wanted me to come the next year with Oscar. Of course, Oscar went to Cincinnati and I went to the University of Nebraska. But the list of letters that the coach got to try to get me to those schools was pretty exciting. All in all, there was a better contact that I had that I thought that would probably make me feel better about where I would go. And that was Tony Sharp. Tony Sharp and Ray Crow went to college together in Indiana. Tony Sharp was, at that time, the assistant basketball coach to Jerry Bush. And he was also the head baseball coach at the University of Nebraska. So because of that relationship, my coach says, if you go to Nebraska, they will probably take care of you pretty well, because I know Tony. We played ball in college together. He's at Nebraska, and if he will take care of you.
What did you think of Nebraska when you arrived here?
Well, I was somewhat shocked. I came out here for just to see what it looked like, and it wasn't nothing that compared to Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah.
When I first got here and walked around, I just stayed on the campus that much. I didn't go anywhere else. And I flew back home, and my first flight ever, plane flight. I remember my mother and my dad wasn't all that excited because he worked a lot, but my mother was home and raised us all. But my grandmother and my aunts and stuff, we all came out to the airport to send me off to come out here, actually come out, because I said I would come here. So after we got here, I met my friend Herschel Turner, who was already out here. Herschel Turner is from Indianapolis also.
Okay.
He was recruited by Jerry Bush. Jerry Bush was from Indiana at that time in that area. It was different. You know, you walked around the place and there was very few black people that you would see and hardly any black women around. So that was all I saw. And I just thought, this is what I'm going to have to get used to and deal with it.
Yeah. Was it challenging to get used to it?
What do you mean by challenging? I don't think it was something I had to really work at it. I think it seemed like the most challenging part was on the other side of how they're going to get used to me. I always felt from why I grew up that the relationship between black and white was like they're over there and you over here. You got everything you need in this part of the city, and you don't worry about that. You need a job. If there's somebody there, treat them nice. Basically, they'll probably treat you nice, and they'll get what they want, and you get what you want. So I didn't have a challenge that I was going to prove myself to somebody, other than I knew what I could do athletic-wise. My challenge really was, how am I going to get through these studies?
Okay.
My challenge was, how am I going to redirect my study habits and those kind of things? That was more frustrating than anything.
And you studied art, correct?
I took art in high school.
Okay.
I took plumbing as a major.
Okay.
I was planning on being a plumber, and then I took the basics. So one of my challenging is to convince my counselor when I got here that I belonged here, I guess, that he was not understanding where I came from. I think because in listening to what he said when he first looked at my transcript, that he didn't know where to put me. He said that all you have there is art and plumbing, woodwork, and all the stuff is in an industrial school. But you got to know where I came from and what school I went to. So they put me in arts and science, And I stayed in there for about a year and a half, and I thought, I think I better get out of there and get into teaching college. It might be a little helpful, and that's why I went into the teaching college, and that's where I graduated out of teaching college.
You obviously had a very successful career on the court.
Yes.
Was it difficult transitioning from high school to college as far as like playing basketball?
No, I thought it was easy.
Really?
I thought it was easy. I have a clip somewhere where I was teaching, actually not teaching, I was showing the other basketball players how to dunk a basketball in 1957.
And was it legal to dunk back then? Like in a game, could you dunk?
Well, it started for a while until Chamberlain had done it so much they disbanded it. You probably can look that up. Mm-hmm. They said, okay, no more dunking.
Yeah.
But they couldn't take that away because people, what is it all about? It's making money, having people in the stands, right?
Mm-hmm.
That changed everything. And if you want to talk about the end of the career myself in high school, is that based on all the scholarships I had from Kentucky State, Tennessee State, Wyoming, Utah, Montana State, Kansas, Indiana, Illinois. I mean, I had a list of letters, but the main purpose, what came out of that was to give black athletes the opportunity to go to major schools, because there was nothing about going to Texas Southern and Tennessee State and Jackson State and all the other black schools down in the South, which changed that, because now they're going to major schools, Division I schools, for the main purpose to draw fans in their stadiums to make money for the universities in all sports. I don't care what it is, track, baseball, basketball, and especially Nebraska and football. Mm-hmm. You can't imagine how much money was made on the back of black people.
And especially now there's a bunch of discussion around paying college athletes,
yes,
and like the structure of that.
Right.
What's your opinion on that as a former college athlete?
Oh, I don't know. That might be uncontrollable. That could cause some big problems on paying them, because how are you going to control that? You can make you can always set a standard on who gets what and why, but right now I think they're talking about high school kids advertising their colors or numbers and stuff, or selling their name, I guess.
Yeah, that like for like social.
Right, this is the new thing out now. I don't know how to control that kind of stuff. Can you imagine what Michael Jordan could be getting out of high school, or LeBron James, and any other high school kid right now that's got the potential? What does he do with all that money to start off? And you're still a junior or senior in high school, going into a school that's hoping to make a lot of money on you. I don't go for that. I wish it would go back to the, old school.
Yeah.
Old school, man.
So you eventually stayed in Nebraska, obviously, because that's where we're doing this interview at. So as you were leaving college, what made you decide to stay here?
Well, I left school because I could not pass a psychology course. It was a 3-hour course. And I did get out of that course that flunked me out of school. So then I got to the place where I was going to go back, but I needed a job because I had gotten married in 1959, and we had a baby on the way. So that just kind of changed my world in a way. I got a job, taught school for another 15 or 16 years, and now I'm retired, and you see my studio, and I'm just doing that. But I did go back to school and then graduated.
And you ended up working at the Lincoln Police.
It was my first major job.
And how did you get that opportunity?
Well, I walked out of my house, which was located at 1029 R Street. At 10th and R, there was Law College right across the street.
Okay.
And I looked to my left, to the west, and there was the police department. And I needed a job. I walked over there, and they knew who I was, of course. And I said, are you really interested? So I went down to City Hall and took the test and all. And in 1961, I was on the police department, and this thing started to... I was in an occupation that never dreamed that I would be in.
Yeah, but you ended up making a career out of it.
But I ended up making a career out of it.
And yeah, what about the role intrigued you? Like, what did you like?
Well, I thought the main thing was that I had some freedom to just basically to police the city using the ordinances and the rules and the regulations and the traffic stuff. And I must have figured that out right at the beginning because it was very comfortable with me. And basically, most of the officers there treated me pretty decent, because they probably were more excited than I was about the job itself because I had no idea about anything about police work. I had learned that. I went to schools and moved myself up in the ranks because I continued to go to school. And I thank the chief of police for allowing me to get those experiences. But it was first just a job and not really knowing when I was going to try to get back in school or when I was going to go back home. But you can tell that never happened. So it got to be better there than I realized. I really liked the job. I liked working with people, talking to people. I didn't mind controlling men time either. I mean, you have so much control of people. There were individuals on the police department obviously did not accept me as who I was. They were gotten rid of. The ones that were prejudiced probably didn't want to bring it out. So that turned out to be a pretty good field for me, but I still, in the back of my mind, I loved to draw and teach art and carry on.
When Martin Luther King Jr. held a rally at the Pershing Center, you were his bodyguard.
Well, what happened, they called me and asked me to come in on this day that Martin Luther King Jr. was coming in. And I thought, whoa, obviously he called me to make him more comfortable as another black officer I wasn't the only one at that time. I don't know why the chief picked me. He could have picked Harry Peterson, who was there about 6 or 7 years before I joined the police department. So I was comfortable with it. I didn't know exactly how you would guard somebody like that. I mean, obviously, I signed up to take a bullet for him if something like that happened. This is talking today rather than 1964 when that took place.
Mm-hmm. Did you know who he was at that time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that every black person in the country knew who Martin Luther King was. How many times they probably seen him on TV or heard about him. And I thought of him as just like a top-notch minister, preacher in the neighborhood that's done, wonderful, magnificent things. So I was kind of excited about that. I didn't go around telling everybody that I would be there at that time.
Yeah. You did or didn't tell anyone?
Oh, no, my wife knew it.
Yeah. I could also see why you wouldn't want to broadcast it.
And I don't know about that. I don't know how much at that time publicity was out there at the Lincoln Star Journal that he was coming and when he was coming and where he would be.
Yeah.
I don't remember all that. I just knew I had to pick him up and take him to Cornersker Hotel, sit with him. And that was just like you and I sitting here together, just talking about things. The first thing most people ask me, and he did so, too, how did you end up in Nebraska? Because I had told him I was from Indianapolis, Indiana, which he was aware of that. He knew Indianapolis.
Of course.
And I told him the same story, basically, that you've already heard. He said, well, that's cool. But, we just talked like he was a big brother. I guess he's he would be about 10 years or so older than I was, so.
And what was he, when you were talking with him and grabbing lunch with him and driving him from the airport, what type of presence did he have?
Well, he had that presence of assuredness of himself. He's very sure of himself, very direct about his speaking tone was just like, like you really want to listen to what he's saying, Mm-hmm. He had that about him. He just was that preacher that I would probably be excited to be anywhere in the country, If he was my minister, I wouldn't think about him any more, any less but he just had something about him. I remember we were talking about, where he'd been and where he was before this and how long, I kind of knew how long he would stay. And he just kind of matter of fact this and that and the other. He didn't really give me any instructions on what I should do. He wanted to know why I joined the police department, and I told him the same thing. I needed a job, and I kind of like working with people. Well, we talked about that a little bit, but it didn't last that long. He'd get me dressed. He would have a 3x5 card and would write some stuff down on it. He would look at that, and I would just sit there. He had a companion person that was with him. It was 2 people that came in. I wished I could recall who that person was. And that person I talked a little bit, and it's just about how is Lincoln, what's Lincoln about, how big is it, how many black folks lived in Lincoln, same old type of information. Then it came time to leave, and we drove over to the Pershing Auditorium, and that's not that far from the Cornhusker Hotel. Yeah. Pulled in the back, got out. There wasn't no big crowds around us or anything. We just walked up there, walked in the back door, got up on the stage. I thought he would pull out of his pocket. He put that note card in his pocket. And what amazed me the most is that he was introduced. He walked up there and he opened up his mouth and he had everybody's attention.
And was it a full arena?
It was pretty much, I would say 5,000 to 6,000 people in there. I don't recall. Yeah. I guess you could look that up.
Yeah.
But he never he never looked at his notes. He didn't put anything on that podium. He just got up there and he just said, boom, 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 boom. He already had planned, I assume, what he was going to say, and he knew how he said it, and he probably said it in so many different places and so many different times. It was just like awesome.
Yeah. What was your biggest takeaway from the encounter with Martin Luther King?
The biggest, that every year after that, people like you and others want to know how it was, and it's really difficult to really say. It was just like a spectator coming into town, and you have to, but as years went by, it was more than that. It just went from here to bigger and bigger and bigger, and today it's even bigger. That you now concerned about it, and other generations that's coming will probably hear this or see this, and they will say, my goodness, what an honor which it was. Mm-hmm. It got to be more of an honor to be in that position. So, thank you, again. I was blessed to be in the position and had the opportunity. It goes all the way back for just end up being in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Both you and your first wife, Joanne, who passed away in 1992,
yes.
Correct? Yeah. You two are both known for your service to the community.
Right.
Joanna has both an elementary school and a senior center named after her. And you've done a bunch of work advocating for youth in this community.
Right.
How did you first get into service, and what drew you into it?
Well, going back and trying to think about how do we get this, I think we were all kind of social individuals, that we like people around us. It probably started at Christ Temple Church, where we belonged when I first got here and left the campus just to walk around, and I went over to the Malone Center area. There was a church right there on the same corner, 22nd and Vine Street, and it was Christ Temple Church. It was just a little thing. Matter of fact, I have some pictures I'll show you of that little church that sit on the corner. For some reason, I walked past there and I could hear singing inside of it. And I walked in there, and that was Trago McWilliams. That's why Trago Park. You know where Trago Park is? You know where Malone Center is?
Yes, yeah.
The park just south of there is called Trago Park.
Okay.
You need to go by there.
Okay.
Because there's some history in that park that you need to see. Starting there, I think, and my first daughter going to Claire McPhee Elementary School started this whole social thing of working with other people in that community. And then because I had access to the whole Lincoln community, and by being an athlete at the University of Nebraska, started talking to a lot of people. Everybody wanted to hear a little something about what I was about. And I think that's the thing that started us to get involved. The main thing that started Joanne involved, she was at Claire McPhee, she was the PTA,
Parent-Teacher
Association.
Yeah, okay.
And they asked her if she wanted to be president of that at Claire McPhee. Because, of course, with our daughter there, we're going to be involved. Because we had other experience at a different area in town here, so we took her out of that school and brought her over there. So when she got involved in that, then other people got behind her and said, why don't you run for school board? So we ran for school board. And we did win that. Of course, the history was made after that. But we were always involved in other churches because of Christ Temple. Because of the University of Nebraska, I was still in contact with them, and I went to all their functions and stuff, so a lot of people knew who that name was, which was a name recognition for her to run.
Yeah.
Basically, I think that was the beginning, and just been always doing it. My kids were involved in everything. Now my grandkids are involved in everything. And
I have a few questions to wrap up, Mr. Maxey. The first, you touched on a few of the racial injustices and inequalities that you experienced throughout your life, and today there are protests
everywhere,
still fighting for that equality. Throughout your life, do you think it's gotten any better, or what's your I guess what do you have a perspective on that, I guess?
That's a broad study of what's happened during my time and what's happening today.
Yeah. I guess
there's a lot of years past. I grew up with knowing that it's obvious that there's prejudice and you need to stay away from it. Hopefully you don't have any problems. But from years and years ago, 400 years, we would still have to go through stuff. Today is broader. There are more people involved. There are a lot of people of other colors that understand what's been happening. They've seen it firsthand. When I was coming up, there's isolated stuff. You still hear the names calling and the stuff. Matter of fact, when I start walking the beat, when I was out of a part of town here in Havelock, you go in there and I could hear the N-word, and that stuff, you just got to, as a police officer for sure, you just got to kind of let it go. And then there's other stuff would go on, and it's very obviously how you've been treated differently. Based on that, in high school, I mean, just the athletic department wasn't getting what they needed because of the crowds they were drawing from my high school compared to other high schools. They weren't getting any of that. We play in our games, regular season games at Butler University, even before the tournaments, because we did not have equal facilities that other schools had. We didn't have it in our school. Our gym would only hold 200 people, if it was 250 maybe at the most. So who wanted to make the money? Indiana public schools. So what did they do? They set up a program at Butler University where we played all our home games there to make more money on us. But we didn't give the equal books, equal this, that, and the other. Anyway, that's that stage. And then the University of Nebraska was they were probably the best school I could have ever gone to, really. But then there was issues. I knew how to adjust to that just like I adjusted in high school. Today, people will not keep their mouth shut and stand for it. People your color, and that color, they aren't going to stand for it today. And I can understand that. When is it going to end? It's going to take some time. But they're going to make a point. The people are going to make a point that we're not going to stand for this. One of my solutions to it is about 3 things. Where's your faith? Where's your heart? Where's your soul? Those 3. The other 3 is need more social workers. You need more parole officers, probation officers, social workers, probation officers, then come teachers, nurses, psychologists. You got to pay social workers. I know social workers today have a workload of 35 or 40 people for one person. I have probation officers that try to take care of 30 to 40 people. It's not enough of them. But you got to pay them money, train them well, watch over them just like you have to watch over police officers. There's always bad something somewhere that has to be done. There's 90% of the police officers in the world are pretty good people. But they are alcoholics, some. They got mental problems, some. They got family problems, some. And then they go out and act like a fool. Do something stupid that jeopardizes the whole police departments throughout the country. That's what I think would help change.
And being a police officer yourself, you have a unique perspective on the issue of what needs to be changed. So that is a valuable perspective. So thank you for sharing. And lastly, Mr. Maxey, you yourself are, with all the success you've achieved and you've done a lot of things, and your persona is now is starting to get bigger than yourself. When I started interviewing people a year ago, my father was like, "You have to talk to Al Maxey." So Tony Goins, last episode's guest, was the one who introduced us. So shout out Tony. Thank you, Tony. So what do you hope your legacy is beyond your time here?
Oh boy. Well, do not make you made a lot of mistakes. He did some bad things and probably some good things in his life. He repented. He thanked God he always thought God was first. Hope my family learned something from him. And, I still have some things in the city that probably will stay for a long time. It's got my name on it. Mm-hmm. So join Maxey Elementary School. Will probably be there for a long, long time. That's part of that legacy. So I thank God that He's given me that opportunity and kept me around this long to appreciate what I do have and how I got it.
Well, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me.
Well, thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I learned a lot, so I just really value your perspective and you taking the time.